Hello, my name is Daniel Wilson, and I am running for Congress in California's 26th district. And this is my domestic policy gauntlet. Do I support Medicare for All? Would I ever stop supporting it? Whose bill do I prefer? And what modifications would I like to add? I am 100% in support of Medicare for All. There's absolutely nothing that would make me change my mind. Every person in our country is limited by our for-profit healthcare system. And not only has inadequate healthcare cost millions of families needed care and the lives of our loved ones, but the financial burden imposed by our for-profit system has also wrought untold devastation on the poorest, most marginalized, and neglected members of our society. This is directly because the pharmaceutical, healthcare, and insurance corporations are out of control. They must be reined in so that they cannot continue to profit off of the pain, sickness, and suffering of our people. The only way to stop these corporations is to nationalize our healthcare system and completely remove the profit motive that has been laced into our medical care and poisoning us for decades. Now, I prefer Sanders' bill over Jayapal's, but will vote for whichever makes it to the House floor. As of right now, I would modify Sanders' bill by empowering our government to manufacture pharmaceuticals in case of failed negotiations with corporations, as is listed in Jayapal's bill, but would also greatly want to speed up the roll down of ages from 65 to 25 so that we aren't waiting 20 years for young adults to get their healthcare. Healthcare is a human right, and it is beyond time we prioritize people over profits. This is one of my core values, and there is nothing that will make me stop fighting to pass Medicare for All. What changes would I make to the Clean Water Act to secure clean water for our people? Over the last 2 decades since the Bush administration's amendment to the Clean Water Act, which removed protections from 20 million acres of wetlands, our water protections have been a flag flapping back and forth to suit the political winds, and this fight will not end until our policies are guided by what people need and not corporate greed. The people trying to stop environmental protections are being paid by lobbyists, and we need to stop tolerating their lies of feigned concern for job loss and the American economy. To combat this system of corruption, I believe we need a complete change of leadership at the EPA, who completely and repeatedly acquiesce to the special interest over the public good. We need to add much more stringent regulations for water pipes and mandate much higher national standards of cleanliness by accepting lower level of toxins in our drinking water. We also need to expand protections to all water sources in America, even ones where dumping of waste may be authorized. Now, this doesn't mean that there can be no waste produced from industry. It just means that we must legislatively force them to evolve beyond a point where we tolerate their toxicification of our water system. If an industry cannot maintain itself while adhering to regulations that prevent humans from being poisoned, then it needs to innovate itself or close its door. And when our politicians stand against any environmental protections, we need to primary and replace them. Because the only argument against protecting our environment and its ability to sustain human life is a bad faith argument that protects profits over people. Do I think ICE should be abolished or reformed? ICE should absolutely be abolished, and we need to shut down all of the for-profit detention centers too, period. There is no reason to waste millions of dollars in resources to reform an agency that shouldn't exist in the first place. There's also no reason to continue to allow private corporations to profit off of the misery, pain, and suffering inflicted upon immigrants. The profit motive comes from the fact that only 10% of detainees are in actual ICE-run facilities, and only 20% are in county and local jails. It is the remaining 70% of the majority of migrant detainees that are held in facilities run by private for-profit corporations. Now, regardless of who runs and profits off of these facilities, since its inception, ICE agencies and their facilities have not only been rampant with physical abuse, sexual assault, authorized torture, and inhumane treatment, but also such extreme and unconscionable actions as the forced sterilization of immigrant women without their consent or knowledge. Despite well-documented evidence of decades of these disgusting abuses, this agency and these facilities are still open, handling women and children, and operating with impunity. So what we need to do is take a good hard look at the sitting legislators that knowingly allow these abuses to continue in the name of protecting Americans and vote them out of office. ICE represents the worst parts of this country, and whether immigrants have come across our borders illegally or not, they are not criminals, but human beings and deserve to be treated as such. Would I give undocumented workers currently in the United States amnesty? I am 100% in favor of full amnesty for all undocumented workers and their children currently residing in the United States. I think it says a lot about where both parties stand today that the last president to give amnesty to undocumented immigrants was Republican Ronald Reagan in 1986. And yet today we fight over even letting refugees in and not abusing the people at our borders. Immigrants have been the backbone of America for centuries now. And if anyone didn't know that before the pandemic, they should damn well know it now. Because it is the farm workers, the food workers, the delivery drivers, the service and domestic workers that kept this nation running while the world shut down. The absolute least we can do for these people that we were calling heroes just 6 months ago is to grant them citizenship that they have earned 10 times over. Improving the quality of life for people that have emigrated here is actually in the best interest of and would benefit all our people and communities, because not only would granting all undocumented workers amnesty immediately economically elevate and empower millions, but it would also financially give them access to the benefits and resources that they have paying taxes into, but could never actually utilize. This would also drastically reduce the stress and extremely negative impacts on their mental health from living in constant fear of arrest and deportation. And one of the best parts, granting undocumented workers amnesty will enfranchise millions of people nationwide to finally vote and participate in the democracy that they love and risked so much to be a part of. Do I support a woman's right to choose? For men, the only answer to this question should be yes, and I will do everything in my power to protect that right. Instead, so often in our country, it is a group of old white men dictating what half of the population can or cannot do with its body. Removing the right to choose disproportionately impacts Black, brown, and low-income communities who already don't have access to the healthcare that they need, let alone reproductive healthcare. As a transgender male, I have lived in both worlds, and it is only further confirmed for me just how easy it is for men to stay the hell out of a woman's body, and how incredibly important that autonomy is. It is because of that very autonomy that I was able to not only discuss potentially transitioning with my doctor, but actually complete my transition from female to male. Although this question is framed around our current fight over a woman's reproductive rights, a woman's right to choose is actually about so much more than whether or not they have an abortion. Supporting a woman's right to choose means supporting them in whatever they want to do with their appearance, their body, their sexuality, their family, their work, and their life. As humans, our only responsibility to the women in our lives and the women in the world is to support them, nurture them when they need it, and protect their right to bodily autonomy. To make sure that we finally put this issue to bed for good, we need to codify into law autonomous reproductive and medical rights so that no doctor, lawyer, judge, or politician can ever tell a woman what she can or cannot do with her body ever again. We can accomplish this in Medicare For All legislation, an updated Equal Rights Amendment, or as a standalone piece of legislation. But this will be codified into law within my lifetime because the people in charge have messed with the last generation's bodily autonomy. Do I support getting rid of the requirement for the USPS to secure benefits 70 years into the future? And do I support USPS public banking? It is entirely without question that we need to repeal the 2006 Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act that implemented a ridiculous requirement that the United States Post Office front load their employee retirement benefits for 75 years from now. This burden has never been placed on any other government agency or corporation, and is wholly responsible for the current congressional-created financial crisis that the post office is experiencing. While repealing the act is not a magic wand that will easily repair all of the harm that has been inflicted on the post office, doing so will stop the bleeding and allow for triage and assessment of damage. While undergoing that triage, we need to immediately remove Postmaster DeJoy if he isn't gone by the time I'm elected, and repeal all of the harmful policies he implemented to intentionally slow down and hamstring an organization already struggling. I'm an ardent advocate of postal banking, and once the PAE Act, DeJoy's processes, and he himself are removed, we need to immediately get to work on reinstating postal banking in the United States. Postal banking will not only help the USPS right its financial troubles, but it will also enfranchise and empower millions of low-income people nationwide that are underserved and underbanked. This is because when postal banking was implemented in the early 1900s, it gave Americans and immigrants a trusted place to put their money because the USPS was backed by federal government and it is mandated by law to serve all residents of this country and to be located in most neighborhoods nationwide. Unfortunately, after the end of the first postal savings system in 1967, the banking market was flooded with not only private and for-profit banks, but something called alternative financial services industry that has since targeted underserved communities with predatory and exploitative services. According to a 2014 report, over $103 billion a year is stripped from underbanked households, which are disproportionately composed of Black, brown, and working class Americans. This is why postal banking is not just a good idea to save the post office itself, but it is a matter of imperative racial and social justice for our most vulnerable communities, as it will lift millions out of poverty, financially empower them, and protect them from the pervasive exploitation of the predatory banking system that we have allowed to infect our poorest community. That was my domestic policy gauntlet. And if you liked what you heard, please go to danielforcongress.com. That is Daniel, F-O-R, Congress.com, to sign up and contribute to our fight for better. And follow me on all of my social medias at Daniel4VC. That's Daniel, F-O-R-VC. Thank you so much. We cannot do this without you.